Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
I've always been fascinated by the way books are put together. I mean, we've been reading books since we were kids, and there's a process that goes into writing a book, copywriting, edits, the cover, the marketing. We're going to do a deeper dive into that today. And I really mean that because one of the books we're going to focus on is called A Deeper Dive. It's a fictional book, and we have the author along with us and the publisher. We're going to start with him. He's the man that helps a lot of people make their dreams come true when it comes to publishing a book, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. Mark Pogodzinski joins us on the program once again. How you doing today?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. I'm glad you bring company with you. We have Deb. Am I saying your name right? Madar?
Madar, like radar.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Welcome. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
So your book, published by Mark's company, is actually called A Deeper Dive, and it's book one in a 2-book series. Tell us what the book's about.
Well, it's actually about a research librarian who retires, probably too soon, and actually starts a podcast. And while she assumes that what she's going to be working with is the local history of Chautauqua County, and that's where she starts, but between circumstances that I shouldn't reveal, she does become a true crime podcaster. And the divers are her audience and fans who sometimes assist in solving the crimes.
This is like emulating my life in many regards. I'm serious.
Okay.
And so on one point, I'm connected to a very famous psychic who has a book coming out in September. And it's actually somewhat based on what you're saying, because he was on my radio show back in the day, and a detective called him up and he started helping solve cases with the detective. And that's what this book is about. But wait, there's more. One of my very close friends is about to finish up his final semester, getting his master's in research librarians, archiving.
Science. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird.
Well, I have a callback to that. One of the characters in A Deeper Dive and then into Boulder Point, its sequel, is Victoria Erickson, who is a psychic spiritualist from Lilydale. So this is getting
very
scary.
weird. This is getting weird.
Yes.
It really
Yeah.
is. And
Yeah.
I just found out this psychic is releasing this book on my birthday, believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
I don't know if that was intentional or not, but it was like when you talk about the audience in the book helping provide the character Meryl Connor, am I right?
Yes, that's her name. Yeah.
It's almost as if that was the police detective from the FBI, by the way, who called in on the radio show providing insight for,
That's amazing.
Let's start digging into this. Now, why this concept of a retired research librarian?
Oh, it's so odd. You won't believe it. Well, I am a retired English teacher. So, it wasn't hard for me to imagine what it would feel like to be retired. I haven't luckily been widowed yet, but my husband is in the garage trying to install a new battery in our SUV. So that could change. But, I just wanted to explore. I'm very interested in characterization. As a reader, I like to read fiction that is character driven. So I wanted to invent this very troubled in the beginning, but very cool librarian in her 6th decade of life, who finds a lot of things, but the podcast in particular gives her a new outlook and a new vocation and a lot of new adventure.
Because anything can happen from somebody reaching out based on the podcast, I would assume.
Yes, it's very true.
Like me meeting somebody who wrote a book that's connected to a psychic. And how much of Meryl is you? Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's the same person. Where would you go with that?
30% is
Okay.
me.
All right.
Other characters, a lot of my secondary characters are definitely taken from real life, from other people, not from myself. So, but no, I wish I were more like Meryl, but no, 30%.
Now, that's the first book. The other book, what's that one called?
Boulder Point.
And does that pick up where A Deeper Dive leaves off?
It does. It does. I had no intention. I am not a fan of series. I had no intention when I wrote A Deeper Dive that there would even be a sequel. But when I finished it, it was like, oh, this is a no-brainer. This
Mm.
leads me right into a second story, more characters, more of Chautauqua County in Western New York, which my readers have become very attached to that element of my writing. So why stop?
Mm.
So yeah.
And does that county actually exist?
Chautauqua County.
Yeah.
Oh my, oh my. Where are you? Are you in Buffalo?
No, I'm Long Island.
You're Long Island. Oh, okay, you're forgiven. Although most of the student body at SUNY Fredonia, which is in Chautauqua County, are Long Islanders. So it's Jamestown. It's closer to the Pennsylvania border.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, on Long Island, we have lots of interesting names of towns connected to Native American culture. So,
Yeah.
when you say that, it sounds real, but I don't know. Maybe you made it
It's
up.
real.
Okay.
Real. It's real. There is a
Gotcha.
very famous institution there, Chautauqua Institution, where unfortunately Salman Rushdie was injured a couple of summers ago. I don't know if you know about that. Yes.
Oh,
But
no.
the institution before then is a very safe place for cultural, academic, kind of 9 weeks in the summer when there's no snow at last.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's what Chautauqua County is mainly known for, I believe.
So, Mark, when Deb came before you with the concept for the first book, A Deeper Dive, what'd you think initially?
Well, I've known Deb a little bit before. We had published one of her first book, which is not part of the series. But with the deeper dive, when I read it over, I got an intense Fargo vibe. Knowing about
Mm,
Chautauqua and living in the area, it was that fictional murder mystery that takes place in a real area, and then the setting becomes a character, and it all comes together, and you have this mystery and you have this character build up, and I was happy to see that the sequel did come out because I think the character is unique. You have an older female character, retired, who's working with modern tech in terms of the podcast, and you have all these like a fish out of water vibe. Like I said, the Fargo vibe I thought was really pronounced. That murder mystery in a town that once you hear the name, you never forget it. With Fargo, it's the same thing. So I thought it had a lot of potential in those terms of the murder mystery, the setting as a character, and the characters themselves. As Deb said, I'm also a big fan of characterization, the building of a character through redemptive, uh, whatever they need to do to get better. And we talked about before that missing piece, the jigsaw puzzle that is a person. You see that in fiction, and I think it works incredibly well with these books.
how about the process? So, Deb came before you, and I don't know what state of her manuscript was provided to you. Can you take us from the beginning there and what needed to get done to get it ready to be published?
Uh,
Yeah.
Deb, Deb's an
Go
extremely
ahead.
gifted author, so her manuscript was really well done. For the process, what we go through is I will make a mock interior for an author, send it as a PDF, they go through it. Okay. And the big thing with especially novice authors, don't be afraid of edits. Nothing is perfect the first time out. No one can put pen to paper and write a masterpiece. Everything has to be edited, sometimes a great deal. We have to go back and look at entire plot lines. But with Deb, like the plot lines were tight, The characters were well formed. So it was just going back and making sure that everything was clean and to her satisfaction.
How about the research that went into this? Now we have uh, a nonfiction county. Did you follow what was going on in the county closely, or that part was made up?
I would say 50-50. For instance, Meryl in Boulder Point does a podcast about, actually, I just mentioned Fredonia State. In 1900, Fredonia State had a building on campus called a normal school. That's where mostly women went to be educated in the arts and reading, elementary in particular. And that place burned to the ground in 1900, and 9 of the women died and a couple of the staff members. So I have Meryl do an episode on the school, but I fictionalize a character who she brings into studio to interview, who has supposedly found letters from one of the women, Maud Fizel, who did exist and she was right about to get onto the fire escape, and she said, "Oh, no, 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 I have to go back to my room. I left my ring." And she ran back to her room and perished in the fire. So I fictionalized some letters that this woman supposedly wrote to a cousin telling her the backstory, what that ring was about and why it was worth saving. So I didn't answer your question at all, did I? So,
No, you did.
so yes, I do research in particular about Chautauqua County, which is rife with mystery and with legends. So that's typically the research I do. Um, Oftentimes, I write about the psychological conditions of some of my murderers, and I happen to be one of 5 siblings, 4 of whom are MSWs. So I go to them and they're therapists. So I pick their brains and do some kind of primary research about psychological, what do I want to say, deficits that lead to criminal activity. So I do that kind of research too.
When the books were done, and let's say that they were published, did you have moments where you look back and you said, "Oh, I
Oh,
could have pivoted this way. I could have went that way. I could have added this character. I could have done this."
absolutely. I just had uh, Boulder Point was made into an audio book. I think it came out in early January, and I had to listen to it over and over again. And there were many moments where I thought, I could have done this, I should have done that. But typically, when I'm finished, I just put it away.
Hmm. I
You know,
detect I detect that you're a perfectionist. Would you describe yourself that way?
um, I don't know. I like what Mark had to say about the tightness of the manuscripts and to some extent, absolutely. I guess so. When it comes to writing, yes. Yeah. Like Mark, I taught high school and college English. So, I come from a background where you taught the masters. So to even try to write myself, it took a few years of one of my sons saying, "You can do it, write something." So yeah, I guess I resisted because I knew it wasn't going to be Joyce Carol Oates. So yes, I am a bit of a perfectionist.
Hmm. Was it almost as if you were feeling like, all right, imposter syndrome. I'm not a writer. I can't, I love literature, but I don't think I could do this.
In the very beginning, that's a perfect way of describing it.
Hmm.
But, it's just so much fun for me and people enjoy reading the books and talking about them. I do like 25 book clubs per book. So, and that's just a thrill to have people talk about Meryl like she's absolutely alive in
Hmm.
their minds. So,
Isn't it
Yeah.
funny or interesting to you that this wasn't intended to be a series? And it's not even a passion, but it turned out that way.
Yes. Yes, it
Hmm.
was definitely. Mark has published two of I think he said this. My first two books were, I think you would call them psychological thrillers. But I challenged myself with those first two books, you know, by the second chapter who did it. You know who the perpetrator is. The question is why. But with the Meryl Connor series, I challenge myself to write a traditional whodunit. So, that's what brought me to. And by the way, I just finished writing the first chapter of book three, and it may be, it may end there, but we'll see.
All right, I want to look at that for a moment. You wrote the first chapter.
Yes,
Do you have
weird.
notes for the other chapters? Like you pretty much know where you're going to go, but you need to fill in the blanks.
That's it. I start with a premise, and the premise has to be pretty well formulated. It's got to be a couple of paragraphs. What if this, I definitely rely on that premise. And then I do minimal plot outlining. Maybe I plot outline the first third and I write those chapters. And then from there, I outline again. Probably I do three plot outlines, but no, I do not know exactly what's going to happen. Uh, I know what's going to happen in chapter one, two, and three right now. I don't know about six.
Hmm.
It'll come to me.
Would you say you make it up as you go along in that
Of,
regard?
of course.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Interesting.
Yes, I
Excellent.
do. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love this. I love the background, the process, and I, like others, try to put myself in your mindset. I'm writing a book. Now I'm hearing from you the beginning of the book, the premise, it's like the foundation, it sounds like. And now you're building the house around it. But what kind of roof are you going to use? Is it going to be architectural shingles? Is it going to be terracotta? I don't know yet. I haven't gotten to the
Mhm.
roof yet. That's what it
Yeah.
sounds like.
That's a very good metaphor. Let me write that down. No. Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Hmm. Could you ever see this being made into a series, TV series, movie?
I could. I see, when I speak to people at libraries and book clubs and wherever they'll have me, often I will have someone say, "Oh, I know Meryl Streep would really make, yes, I think it could be. I think I mean, it unfolds like cinema and film when I'm writing. I can, that's how I see it. So yeah, I think it could.
It brings to mind other shows and movies that featured, yeah, disc jockeys, if you will, radio shows. And this is pretty much an extension of that when we call it, from the podcast view. I mean, there was so many different ones that I'm trying to think of some of the titles. But even comedies like oh,
WKRP in Cincinnati was
will there
that
be one
one?
of them?
But it,
Grammar oh, uh, gosh, what's his name? I see his face.
Frasier.
Frasier.
Kelsey,
Frasier.
it was
Frasier.
Fraser.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
yeah,
based on a radio studio, and
yes. And so was Clint Eastwood's, you're maybe too young, Play Misty for Me. Do you remember that
yeah.
thriller terror that I
Oh,
can
for sure.
still picture that studio that, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
As a
true.
matter of fact, I did a deep dive last week. Somebody mentioned Clint Eastwood and how they were fascinated by him. A friend, and I was like, I gotta research this dude. Like 94. Just I couldn't stop
Yeah.
looking deeper into his life and everything that he's done, and how he comes up with ideas, just like we're
Mhm.
we're talking about here. Um, Mark, what do you think is the next logical step for Deb and this series?
Well, actually brings up a lot of good points, and especially mystery writers have to be a little bit different because you basically have to plan out a murder mystery. You have to plan out a murder. So in your head, you're thinking dark thoughts, and that can be amusing, and it,
All
it can
day.
be a little terrifying. Like, oh, I'm a retired teacher, and I was always a nice person, but wait, I have this image of my head of a murder, and it looks like incredibly graphic in my mind, and now I'm going to describe it on a page. And I think it's a fascinating creative process when you're sitting at home, comfortable, and you're like, you know what? How do I kill somebody in the most
Exactly.
creative,
Right.
interesting
Uh,
manner, but not reveal who did it? And it takes a lot of skill and it takes a lot of imagination. You
hmm.
pull in from like Chautauqua, the mysteries there, or a lot of the murder mysteries are regional. People are pulling in stories that they've heard. They're influenced by movies or TV shows. But the murder mystery writer is an interesting character unto themselves. So I would hope that she continues to write murder mysteries, and perhaps a wife who's angry at her husband, who's changing an SUV battery, but she's done
Yeah.
something to the car, and all of a sudden she is a widow. And
Uh,
not that that will happen, but as you're sitting in your kitchen going, murder mystery, oh, how would I kill my husband if I
uh,
had to?
that's
And
good.
then, you would go down an imaginary rabbit hole, which is what murder mystery writers have to do. And I think that's when you get your audience responds to that, because they're like, you know what, I've thought of these things too. I
I
didn't
don't
put
want
them
to
down
admit
on
it,
paper,
but I've thought of them.
but I've thought of them. And and fictionalizing it and having the detective, and the detective's a little bit broken, and they're trying to recover from a trauma, and they're meanwhile they're trying to solve a murder mystery,
Mm,
a 90-year-old mystery, again based on real events. But then you start thinking about what was it like to escape that, and then that's not an easy thing to do, to imagine all those horrible things and try to get them down on paper so they're not off-putting, but can bring an audience in so that they want more. And you see that the popularity of the murder mystery is astronomical.
sure.
Agatha Christie still remains one of the great bestsellers year in, year out, because she planned a really interesting murder.
Mm. And we've said before, a lot of these books have the same formula. The characters when they're established, it kind of, it's the same premise, but different. And it's so funny as you mentioned that, Mark. I had the same visual about husband in garage, and I just have this picture now of Deb's husband opening the door. Hey, hon, I fixed it. It's all good. And meanwhile, she's thinking something totally different.
Oh my.
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
Not that it would
ideas,
happen, just
not that
it's
it would
all
happen.
fiction,
Yes,
making it up.
Yes.
ideas come from anywhere.
Yes. Yes, they do.
Wow.
Yes.
Fantastic talking with both of you today. And really, no pun intended, but maybe it is, doing a deeper dive into the the inner workings of a book, the beginning and how we get to where we are. And congratulations, Deb. It's
Thank
almost,
you.
you retired. Uh, and this is almost an extension of you to let your creativity out.
Very true. Very true. And I've loved this. This has been a pleasure.
Wow. NFBpublishing.com is the website for anybody that's pondering creating something. It can be done. Don't be afraid. And I love the part that Mark is a smaller publishing company, but you take care of everything. I mean, it's not a big impersonal situation. You walk the journey with everybody, and just fantastic. Mark, what would you say to somebody right now that's considering, they have ideas in their head, but they haven't really taken that next step to write a book, or they think that they can? What would you tell them?
Take inspiration from Deb. Okay. Again, you teach it, you're bombarded with the classics. Like, these people are perfect, but everybody, Shakespeare down to Deb, has to go through rewrites, and they have to start somewhere, and they have to put pen to paper and think to themselves, you know what, I can do something, even if it amounts to one poem scribbled on the back of a napkin,
Hmm.
and who knows what that can lead into. So I'll take inspiration from her. Think, I, I can do this, and maybe you have to be pushed by a child.
um, but you know what? I think we all have creativity in us, and it's just we're afraid. We're afraid of how it might be judged. Just have fun with it. And it looked like, Deb, you had fun with it.
It's fun. It is fun. It is fun. Some days I'm doing a little cursing, but I get through that, and I
All
wouldn't
part of
mind.
the creative process.
That's right. That's right.
Mark and Deb, thank you so much for being here today. Truly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.